Okay, welcome everybody to the Joint Overview Committee of the 7th of June 2023. Item 1 on the agenda is to appoint a chairman for the meeting. Can I seek nominations, please?
Can I nominate Councillor Parks, who luckily happens to be sitting in the chair already?
Sorry, I need it to be a committee member to second, please.
I would like to second that proposal.
Thank you. Are there other nominations? Otherwise, Councillor Parks is appointed chairman for the meeting.
Thank you. Could have been a bit awkward if it had been someone else. I'd have had to unplug everything and move. So thank you very much for the confidence you put in me. So we move to item 2, which is apologies.
Chairman, apologies from Councillors Lugg and Starr.
Thank you very much. Item 3, which is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held nearly a year ago on the 29th of June 2022. Could I have a proposer for those? Thank you, Councillor. And a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Thank you. Okay, move to item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest or anything on the agenda today? No. Okay, move on. There is no public participation and there are no questions from councillors. So we move to the main event, which is the library strategy. I'm going to hand over to Kate and Lisa to do a presentation for us.
Good afternoon to the Chamber and thank you, Chair. I'm Lisa Cotton. I'm Corporate Director of Customer and Cultural Services and I'm very pleased to be here with you today with my colleague Kate Turner, our Library Strategy Manager, to present our Library Strategy Report and accompanying documents. So this report and draft strategy, action plan, research and evidence papers that support the strategy are the final outputs from over 18 months of engagement, including 2 in-depth and inclusive consultation phases. This has provided our organisation with the privilege of working closely with our communities, partners, workforce and members to co-produce our strategy that will guide the delivery and development of services over the next 10-year period. So during our presentation today, we will review once again the incredible response that we have had and the work that we have done to listen to our communities, our children and young people, and groups who are seldom heard. We have also bucked the national trend with an extraordinary response from our non-library users or lapsed users, those that used to use libraries and no longer do, helping us to consider how to be truly inclusive in our approach and consider their future needs. Following both phases of consultation, we've had the opportunity to bring our data, our evidence and conclusions to this joint committee, and we thank you for joining us once again today to support our work. Kate is going to take us through a presentation that provides a clear summary of the report and work and those accompanying papers, which, whilst we appreciate provide a huge amount of detail and information, are the combined evidence pack to support the decisions before you today. And today we ask you to consider 4 recommendations and that committee consider the contents of the report and outcome of phase 2 public consultation and recommend to Cabinet to endorse and adopt the library strategy, the operating model and the action plan, that we consider all proposals within this report and recommend to Cabinet the implementation of the operating model from 2024 by the Library Service following consultation with our workforce and engagement with the communities. Note the consultation and engagement undertaken with our communities and note the findings and proposals contained within the Equality Impact Assessment. So with permission, Chair, I will now hand over to Kate Turner.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll hit the button. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. So, as Lisa said, after more than 18 months of development, over 12,500 consultation responses, 29 workshops and a lot of testing and refinement, I'm ready to recommend a final version of the strategy and operating model to you. Throughout the process, our goals have been to ensure that we fulfil our legal and statutory obligations to provide a comprehensive and efficient library service, to explore and understand how the library service aligns with and contributes to multiple Dorset Council objectives and priorities as part of one team with both our internal and external partners. We also seek to provide a forward-looking framework which sustains and develops the library service over the next 10 years to meet our mission, to inspire, connect and enable our communities through our services and deliver our vision, trusted community spaces for everyone with services to inspire your future, and to lay out before you how we propose to do this through our new operating model and action plan. So how have we got to where we are today? The strategy detail was developed under the guidance of our cross-party library strategy steering group with strong engagement from communities and partners through both phase 1 and then following test and refinement with similarly strong engagement in phase 2. So throughout, our approach has been community-led through surveys, workshops and one-to-one interviews. Our one team and partner-focused approach has been primarily with workshops, briefings, but also one-to-one meetings, and our evidence base through our strategic needs assessment and the reports. So our new library strategy reflects the wealth of feedback received throughout this process. Just a few facts and figures, as we're very proud of our engagement numbers. So as I said, over 12,500 responses to our surveys, and we've recently realised we had a 5% of non-use and lapsed users in there, which we recently learned was a very high response rate for this type of service, as advised by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. So thank you to everybody who contributed. So phase 2, how did we do in phase 2? So the consultation ran from September to December 2022 and focused on testing the key aspects of the strategy and operating model and exploring the impact of any changes with our communities and partners. So specifically, we reviewed our core offer and sought to define the services available in the different types of libraries. We also sought to co-design our operating model with communities and partners and to explore standard operating hours for libraries. We've also explored, as I said, the impact of changes with communities and partners and sought to understand what they value about services and when they would like to use them. So I've spelt out the different responses from the 3 different surveys there. So we had a makeup of children, over 16s and employees, partners and business responses. We also undertook engagement workshops, so 6 with partners and adults of different types, members, library users, non-users, and also specifically 2 workshops with children and young people of different age ranges that took part in the survey. So, what did our communities tell us? The next slide will take you through the details contained in 5 appendices. So we've collated this together for you today. Oops. Okay. So, first off, our children and young people survey. In our response of 563, roughly 50% were both 5 to 10 years and 11 to 15 years. So we've gathered the full range of that age profile. They told us that 69.4% of them actually use a library, but 18.8% no longer do so. Children aged 5 to 10 are more likely to visit the library compared with the older age range. And 34.7% of 11 to 15-year-olds said that they used to visit a library when they were younger, suggesting they no longer visit. what are their priorities? The top priority for all the age ranges was books to enjoy reading and learning. That's a very strong, clear message. Interestingly, 5 to 10-year-olds voted for events and activities as second most highly ranked priority, whereas this was the lowest ranked for the 11 to 15-year-olds. Instead, the 11 to 15-year-olds ranked tackling climate change as the second most important aim. When we asked what was important about library spaces, both age groups picked fun and welcoming as the key factors, with the top priority for 5 to 10-year-olds being fun, and for the 11 to 15-year-olds being welcoming and inclusive. So it highlights the importance for teenagers of that aspect of a library. And we also asked, more importantly, what would they miss if the library wasn't available? And again, books came out above and beyond all the other things that we do. So borrowing books, 69%, activities, 43%, and reading or learning, 40%. And I think what was most revealing was the comments from the children and their carers, which illustrate how much they value libraries. So particularly the younger children, colouring crafts, meeting others, and the activities within the library. The very youngest ones, the library picture hunt, is particularly popular, I think, because it involves getting sweets if you get it right. It was also interesting to hear how the quietness was also a key aspect for people looking for somewhere to work and do their schoolwork. And I think particularly revealing was the space that a library provides to spend time reading with my grown-up when they're not distracted by doing other jobs at home. So having that space for carers and children to really enjoy and make the most of reading. When would children and young people be most likely to visit? Part of the consultation was around opening hours and the operating model. So we asked each group when they would prefer to visit. So probably no surprises here. During term time after school, so 4 till 6 and afternoons. Saturday is the most popular day, but Friday and Sunday were the next most popular days. And we were advised that visit times were likely to change during the school holidays, with afternoons and mornings being more popular than evenings, and weekdays being more popular than weekends. And finally, we asked children and young people about the different types of library names. So we proposed Library, Library Plus, Library Connect. Of those, 68% that they do understand the names, but 31% said that they didn't. And effectively, children and young people don't really mind what we call a library. A library is a library. One of the things we did ask them to do was to give us their ideas for what they would like to call a library. And I've shared some of them with you on the slide today. So you could see how imaginative they are, our children and young people, but actually how much they value books and reading, I think really came through within the names that they chose as well. And it shows how we were able to really engage with that age group. So, moving on to older users. So looking at the main survey for 16-year-olds and over, just to give you a flavour of who took part, it's 97.9% Dorset residents, 85% over 45, 64% female, 88.7% identified as white British, and of these respondents, 96.4% said that they use a library. So, what did they tell us? As you can see, they were very supportive of our mission and key themes. So as you recall, these were developed from the phase 1 consultation. So it was great to see the agreement we have with those co-designed mission and themes. So both Inspire, Connect and Enable, all very strongly supported. Next, I'll just take you briefly through the most important ranked aims within each of the themes. So for Inspire, the key aim there was the first one, language and literacy. Again, I think it's reflecting the feedback from the children and young people. The second most important was digital skills, and the other aims were ranked but less highly. Disabled people had the same priority order as non-disabled people, but children and young people, well, the 16 to 24-year-olds, rated activities more highly. In terms of Connect, the most important aim there was the awareness of the offer among residents and partners, followed by meeting customer need. And it was the same priority order from disabled people as non-disabled people. And finally, for Enable, the most important there was the inviting spaces, so inviting flexible and well-used spaces, followed by trusted spaces. Health and wellbeing was the lowest ranked for the majority. However, for people with a disability, that was more highly ranked, I think, as you'd expect. So for each of the themes, customers did raise queries about some of them, and I'll come on to how we respond to that later. In general, in response to the operating model, again, we have very high levels of support. So 81% agree with the operating model, with only 5% disagreeing. 82.4% agreed with the services listed by library type, and 73% agreed with the names, that the names a library, Library Plus, Library Connect, help to explain the type of services offered. So I'll come back to feedback about the operating model when I move on to that part of the presentation. Just looking now at our third survey, this is for employees, partners and business. Again, very high levels of support, so 95 supporting our mission, Inspire, Connect, Enable. 63% responded that they would help us deliver the mission, and we had a lot of support there, a lot of offers, which are reflected in the action plan. 95% agree our values are appropriate, 81% agreeing with the operating model, and 67% agreeing that the names help to explain what services to expect in the library. From this group, the most highly ranked aims were similar to the main survey, with language and literacy being the most important one for Inspire, awareness of everything that library service has to offer, the most important for Connect, and for Enable, creating inviting, flexible and well-used spaces. There's a really consistent message from all the different consultations. So, how are we responding to that? A really key thing from all the consultations was the importance of reading for pleasure, culture and literacy. So we've taken that on board and we've actually revised the wording of our theme there to include culture and to include reading for pleasure in the aim there, because it's clearly so critical for everybody. We had a lot of feedback around the offer and kind of clarifying what some of those mean. So where we went through Inspire, Connect, Enable with all the aims, some of those were less well understood. And so we've taken that feedback away, and we'll make sure when we move into the action plan that we really explain that a bit more clearly. We've already written our strategy in plain English. That's the version that's available with the documentation today and on the website. The importance of inclusive, welcoming, trusted spaces was also very clear. So again, I've reviewed the proposed action plan and strengthened some of the actions there to emphasise that, particularly working with our equality, diversity and inclusion group on all the different groups then, and really focusing on being inclusive. On the names, a library is a library. Came over very loud and clear. So I think from an organisational perspective, we need to be able to have the difference between Library, Library Plus, Library Connect. From a public perspective, that's less important. So one of the things we have done as a result of the feedback is just make that a bit clearer by using the word plus rather than the plus symbol. And I'd love to use some of the wonderful ideas from the children and young people, but perhaps we'll just stick with library. The other thing we're challenged to do is to ensure that our services are as widely available as possible. So this was a concern that was raised, particularly across the county as a whole. So we propose to use a cluster model to organise and structure our services to enable us to share resources across the area more readily. And I'll come on to explain that with the operating model. Okay, so the rest of our evidence base. So a very important piece of evidence is our strategic needs assessment, which was presented to you last year. So this has now been revised with data from 2023 for this year, using the data from the latest census, 2021 census, as data sets become available. I've also updated the library demand section with library demand data from the past 12 months when the report was done, to bring that really up to date as well, as we felt it was very important to reflect changes following the pandemic and changes in patterns of usage. So just to remind us what's included within the needs assessment, there are effectively 7 measures of need, and the areas of need are on the slide. So from education through to demographics, the index of multiple deprivation, health, crime, digital and local economy. And then we have 1 indicator of library demand, which covers a range of different data. So our active borrowers, the issues, event participation, computer use, and also service isolation. So that is the proximity to other libraries. So with those 8 measures, that makes up the matrix of need and demand that has been crunched on our behalf. And those are then applied to library catchment areas and result in a heat map. So this is the updated heat map. It is very similar to the one that was put together as a result of the 2022 data. And effectively, as you see, the darker areas, so the red and the orange, indicate the areas of higher need, and the paler areas, so the blues, the greens, the areas of lower need. So it shows that the areas of higher need are generally in the west and the mid area, and the library catchments with the highest overall combined need are Weymouth, Bridport, Portland, Littlemore and Dorchester. I also have a list. As you can see, this again is from high demand, the red areas, through to the lower demand, the paler areas. Sorry, need rather than demand. So this has been a really critical piece of data to confirm our way forward and to inform how we put our operating model together. So, the operating model, here we are. So we have our 3 types of library, our library, Library Plus and Library Connect. And we propose 10 libraries, 8 Library Plus and 5 Library Connect. As part of the feedback around the operating model, I'll come on to in a bit more detail. We've actually moved Shaftesbury from Library to Library Connect because of the feedback that we received there. So this is the point at which we're announcing the hours per type of library, so 18, 30 and 42. And also our geographical cluster model. So this was put together as a result of feedback to meet the challenge of providing services over a wide area. We were advised to look at a couple of models, so a hub and spoke and a cluster model, and we think a cluster model is going to be the most effective from our perspective as to how to do this. So you have a Library Connect, Library Plus libraries in differing numbers depending on the geographical area. And again, you've got here the colour change from areas of lower need to areas of higher need. So that's how the model translates into reality. So that's the overall model. So how then do we move from the model of 18, 30, 42 to actual open hours per library? So again, we've looked and listened to the feedback from our survey respondents. So over 70% agreement with the proposed classification of 19 of our 23 libraries. The only library, as I say, where we had a negative net agreement, as in minus agreement, disagreement, minus 22% was from Shaftesbury. So we felt that, obviously, we really wanted to listen to that, so we've made that change. The other 3 libraries, there were lower levels of agreement, but still agreements. So we've reviewed those libraries. We don't propose to make any changes. The hours that we recommend are within the range of hours within the consultation, and the overall net effect when we apply those hours between the current Dorset Council staffed hours and proposals is as a net loss of 1 hour. So we've then gone on to develop a granular pattern of open hours per library to meet customer needs, and that is actually on the website. Because it's a lot of detail to go into here. I don't propose to go into that, but I do have the information if anyone has any questions. And what that does is it meets what people told us was important about our opening times. So this is what people have asked us to do, to basically have hours which meet everybody's needs. And there's a very wide range of needs which are very diverse. So we want to have standard, easy to remember opening times, open Mondays to Saturdays, in mornings, afternoons and after school, at lunchtimes and evenings for those who can't come, need to come around work, with some closed days for community use, but also not for every library to be closed in the same area on the same day. So it's a tall order, but we hope that we put a proposal together which meets the majority of the needs that we've been expressed to us. Okay, so as I say, we hope that through our model we're able to meet the majority of those needs, but we anticipate that communities may disagree, and so we've looked at what we could put together to assist in managing the impact from communities. So we're at the stage now of engaging with communities where changes have an impact, who want us to consider. So the suggestions we've got for how we might do that are to use a phased approach to implementation, to explore willingness from town and parish councils to assist with the model, and to also look at the potential for volunteering using our existing model. So 2 and 3 are part of our current operating model. It's proposals, and we have ways of doing this now. So we propose to offer those more widely if communities choose to take those up. We're not asking them to do so, but the offer is there. So communities may wish to enhance the Dorset Council offer with financial contribution, volunteering. We also have the potential for a model which extends opening hours using technology when buildings are unstaffed. It's a tried and trusted technology which many of our neighbouring authorities use, and we are, as part of the action plan, one of the actions is to put in a bid for this technology, so communities could contribute to use that if they wish. So our next steps, we have a few more rounds of communication to do. We've been doing lots of briefing to many groups, so our town and parish councils and community managed libraries are the next. The forward governance following from today's meeting, we hope to be able to go to Cabinet in July. And as I say, we are very much in the process of responding to community engagement at the moment. The action plan, I've got a few slides covering some key aspects of the action plan next. The intention is to go live with the new model from April, but there's a lot of work to be doing between July and April to get us to that point. One of the things we were asked to do was to put a plan on a page. It's a very detailed slide there, so I've actually broken it down to hopefully make it a bit more visible. So this literally is Inspire, Connect, Enable on a page, focusing on the key things which I've taken you through to bring those together. And we'll be measured by how we make a difference. So, you know, looking at how customers use our resources and services, attendance at events and activities, and I think most importantly for me, customer feedback, telling us that people feel welcome and included in our libraries. I think that's the most critical measure of all. So in terms of how we get there, I do apologise, this is the They are detailed parts of the action plan. Effectively, developing our marketing strategy this year to be ready from April to really be able to promote the changes and the new service, getting our workforce ready, really investing in them through the process to get to the transformation we need to get to from April. And alongside that, our workforce development plan to really support the staff to be ready to develop the strategy in the way that we've outlined. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. I think before we go to questions, Councillor Beddo would like to have a word. I got your name right.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I won't take long. I just wanted to draw attention to the great work that's happened so far. This is a piece of work that I'm really, really, really proud of. When you start talking about libraries, the first thing that people say is, oh my goodness, you're going to close our library. Right from the start, our sort of driving force and our mission has been that we're not, and we're going to make it better, and we're going to work with people, and we're going to try and shout about our libraries and really take people with us. Everybody that I work with knows how strongly I feel about co-production, co-creation. I have to say this whole process has been a brilliant example of that. And I'm really, really proud of Lisa and Kate, and also Liz, who's off at the moment, for taking this strategy in such a way that it has been so interesting to be a part of. It's not been a dry kind of, sometimes our stuff's a bit dry, but we've really gone out and chatted to people. And I think, you know, with the stuff from the kids, you can see that. You can see the energy and how valued our library services are to people. So I just wanted to make that comment that this is something that for me is really, really alive, and meetings like this are really brilliant because we get to talk about it, and thank you to the team. And I can't wait to hear your comments.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Jesperson.
Yes, a question and a comment. But first of all, can I just say, I think this is the most superb piece of work that you're nearly coming to the end of here. What I see here is a kind of passion for libraries and a willingness to get into a level of detail that means that we're going to end up with a library plan that will see us through for the next 10 years really, really well. And I'm loving every minute of it. You won't be surprised to see that I smiled when you said that a library is a library. You might remember at the very first meeting, me telling you that library services for the last 30 years that I know about have asked what's the best thing to call a library, and the reply always comes back, the best thing to call a library is library. And so we've just proved that yet again. Also, as someone who had a very, very long-standing involvement with the Greenaway and the Kate Greenaway and Carnegie Medals for Children's Books in a previous life, I was pleased but not surprised to see that what children actually told you is the thing they most want is books to read. And that it's lovely to see that, notwithstanding the digital world, that doesn't change as well. So lots of lovely things to see in this, and thank you very much indeed. First of all, can I ask it's a slightly technical question. Blandford Plus Library, there's been a long-standing agreement that Blandford Library needs a different location, and that's something that has, we've all understood that for a long time, but it hasn't been forthcoming for a range of reasons. Can I be assured that if we don't manage to find a new location, a new site for the Blandford Library, it will still be able to go ahead and be the library that it needs to be, even if it has to stay on its current site for the time being? That's my first question.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Yes, that's our intention. So Blandford is our choice for Connect for that area, and the building isn't what we'd like it to be. We've got 2 libraries which are kind of our top priority with the work with Assets and Regen and other partners to really look at getting those libraries the building that they require. So yes, but in the meantime, it will continue in the site that we have. But that's a key part of the next phases of the work.
Thank you. That's very reassuring. My next is more of in the nature of a comment. So having welcomed the fact that books and reading for pleasure has come forward with both adults and children as their top priority, and you said that you then introduced those words at the high level. I didn't see as much as I would have liked to have seen then that embedded in the plan. Not as much reference to it. And also, for example, when I'm looking at page 7 or 8, you're in under Connect, you reference that you would bring the library services programme of events in line with LGBT plus events and so on. Now, there are lots of other cultural and reading events in Dorset that I would like to see the library's programme of events brought in line with. I'm thinking of Dorset Arts Weeks. I'm thinking of when our towns have literary festivals, which increasingly they do. Even the Chalk Valley History Festival, I know it's over the border a bit, but it's very important. It's a very big event for the people in North Dorset. And I don't see that reflected in there, this lining up the marketing and the events with the book reading public, as opposed to the where the public need support and engagement and so forth. So it's just a thought. You may say it's in there, but I didn't see as much of it as I would have liked to have seen.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the revised action plan, there's a couple of aspects there. I think we probably tried to condense some of the actions together, and we may have over-condensed perhaps. Yes, so the row that you're alluding to, co-create a calendar of events with communities and partners. The particular way that action is worded, the milestone action, is around the internal calendar of events, which is the Dorset Council's calendar, but that absolutely does not mean we'll not be aligning with everything else that's going on as well. So we have nationally the Libraries Connected is our kind of organisational body, so they have a calendar, an annual calendar which we use. It's really bringing all of those things together and then prioritising in accordance with where that is most important for the community, and potentially where there's something that as a council we want to promote, that we use that as a hook there. But absolutely where there's those other events. The other area we've got actions is with the cultural group. So the work with Dorset Cultural Strategy, so the Cultural Officers Group, which some of members of my library management team are attending now, and it's what comes through from that as well. So I think there's a lot of potential there for co-production of bringing reading into other events and linking that together. So that's what we intend to do. So no, thank you for the prompt.
Thank you, Chairman. One thing we do have 4 events happening in the Stunts Literary Festival in the library. The main determinant of whether it goes there or not is whether there's space or not at that particular time, but we're working on it. And that is important. And I both chair the Literary Festival and the Friends of the Library, and we're working hard to improve our relationship, which has always been a good one with our library staff. One thing that people frequently comment on in our library, and it must apply to others where they're open 18 hours a week, is when you know the library. How do you know the library is open? So you're driving past and you might not glimpse the light on or the thing on the door. So certainly in Sturminster, we were thinking we'd present the library with one of those feather flags. that they could put outside when the library's open and take in when it's closed. Bit of a pain for the librarian, but maybe, or something very visible, a sign over the door that you press the button and say, library open. Something very clear to ensure that people know. And the other thing is we've got those counter type things when you go in and out the library. So that obviously the other thing to do is make sure you go in and out several times, so you count it several times, put the numbers up. But apart from that, no, I think totally support what Sherry said about integrating our libraries with our community activities. And I know there was a discussion along the way about whether people like the Friends of the Library should be charged for using the library for events. I don't remember what the conclusion was with that, but if we're running events to promote getting people into the library, it seems a bit sad if we're actually going to be charged as well. So,
thank you. So one of the activities we've been asked to pursue obviously is around commercialisation and making sure that we maximise income opportunities. Obviously there's a fine line there where we've got different use of the library and different organisations using the library. So a new library hire model is about to be launched in July. A proposal was put together and shared and then withdrawn and revised as it was overcomplicated. So that's coming out. So one of the things we've looked at there is groups that are exempt during library opening hours. Because what we want to do is where the space is being used when we're not open is to make sure that we cover the costs of running the building. So that's a really important principle to do there. Myself and Anthony Palumbo, the operational lead, met with the Friends just last week, actually, and that's something that we had a robust debate about. We have a wide group of library friends operating across Dorset, and a range of views within that group as to our proposals. So that's something we're taking the time to look at with them. But it's a really important principle that we do recover costs of use of buildings when they're not open. So that's something we need to make sure that we do, and that's what's behind the new hire model.
Thank you. Just two little thoughts, really, and I'm not actually sure what you can do about either of them, really. I know that there are youngsters that would benefit enormously from doing their homework within the school library because home lives are chaotic or there's no room, too much noise, etc. But of course, what stops a number of them is the school transport that has very little flexibility. I don't suppose there's anything we can do that as part of this, but I just wonder if we could think about, as a whole council, whether there are ways of addressing that issue that would also enable some of these children to do our after-school clubs and so on and so forth. And the other thing, certainly in the area that I represent, we do have a pretty high population of Ukrainians and Bulgarians, and I just wonder whether what is going to be, how will they know they are welcome in our libraries if they're not very good with English? Are we doing something, can we do something in terms of translating, something to attract them in? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I can have a go at both of those. So the library strategy, it's really difficult with school libraries because they're different. I know that some schools and some through Dorset Council provide later buses if kids are doing sports clubs, and that children can use those if they want to stay on and work in the school library. I also know that we've looked at, so that's one thing, not all schools do it, and that not all schools have that later bus, but where there are, I know because my son's at a school that doesn't, but where there are those opportunities, that's kind of down to the school, but we do talk to the school libraries. Where we've engaged with younger people with our libraries, and our community managed libraries do as well. I mean, I was in Gillingham Library and, just for a sort of visit, and the kids just came flooding in and started getting the Lego out. They know that they can come in straight after school. So whilst their school library might not be available, where you've got a town setting, it's about reaching out to the schools and kind of saying, if you've got groups of children that want to do their homework and perhaps they don't have the space to do it at home. They can just pop in on their way home with or without their parents, depending on their age, and all of those things. So we do that kind of stuff, and that's kind of already there, but we wouldn't necessarily be explicit in the strategy because it is quite level, but it is a high level, but it is a really good point. On the Ukraine and people that might not have English as a first language, part of our outreach stuff, I guess, with this strategy is to talk to lots of different groups. So we talked to Dorset Race Equality Council, we talked to town and parish councils, so we're trying to reach all those groups because it's not just people that might not have English as a first language. There's other groups, people with disabilities, people with hearing impairment, people with visual impairment, that might need different kind of engagement. So that would kind of come under that. And I hope that where we work with Homes for Ukraine, and we work through the voluntary sector, and I sit on those groups as well, that they would know that actually they can go in, they would be welcome. And we also have translation services that we're linked in with as part of the voluntary sector response to that. So we wouldn't necessarily be explicit about that in this strategy, but I know that that's ongoing. And I'm happy to pick up those links if they're a bit missing in certain areas where there are lots of people from Ukraine. Is that helpful? Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Yeah. First of all, going back to opening hours, you say you're going to have standard hours so customers know when the library is open. Now, at the moment, Dorchester Library, for instance, every day is different. And how are we going to fit all the standard hours into the number of hours you say Dorchester can be open? Are we going to have less hours? Are we going to have still evenings open? And are customers going to be given a long notice to say when hours are changing? That's my first question. I want to come back now.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. So for Dorchester, Dorchester is one of the libraries with our longest opening hours at the moment. So Dorchester is currently open 45 hours. So the model for Connect is 42 hours. So the proposals for Dorchester, for Connects in general, are opening hours 10 till 5 on weekdays with one late night open till 6. And then on Saturdays, 10 till 4. That's the proposal. So they're open 6 days a week. So you've got the ongoing every day. So Dorchester at the moment isn't open every day because it has a half-day closing on a Wednesday. And that's what we propose to change because it doesn't make sense. So we're moving to 6 days opening. And so with that regular pattern, it's open 10 till 5, but with a late night. And then the 10 till 4 on Saturdays. So in terms of communicating, that's a really, really key part of the marketing and promotion plans for April. Throughout my career as a library worker, I know that's one of the most difficult things to get across to people, and people have very long memories of opening hours. So even years after you make a change, it's still within the folk memory somewhere. So I absolutely accept that is a challenge for us, and we need to think creatively at how we reach out to people. So we'll be exploiting all the networks that we have to get that message across. But we've got time to plan it. But I absolutely accept that it's really important to let people know.
And it's already on the website.
Yeah, yes, actually that's a point. So as part of the publication of documents for this meeting, we put the proposed hours on the website, so they are there, and hopefully that's reaching out to people as I make briefings and people pick up on the messaging from this meeting today.
Is that it's going to be open on a Wednesday afternoon, as it's market day in Dorchester. People come into town and suddenly the library is closed for them. Can I ask about the other rooms in the library? Will they be available for community use when the rest of the library is closed, as they are now?
Yes, they will, yes.
Can I go to children? It's very important. At the moment, you do such wonderful work in the libraries for young children, adults, and I hopefully that will all continue because that's excellent. But some youngsters are not near a library. And years ago, the library used to go around with a van to schools in villages to let them have a look at what a library would look like. Are you going to do that for children, youngsters who are not near a library?
So we don't have any plans for mobile libraries at all. I'm not 100% familiar with the offer to schools in terms of the school library. I know that's unfortunately, I should confess at this point that I'm on secondment to Dorset, so my home authority is Somerset. So there are some elements of working Dorset which I'm not 100% familiar with, and that will be one of them. But I can absolutely check. I don't know if Lisa might have more familiarity than myself with that precise nature of the offer.
As Kate and Laura have said, it is varied at the moment, so I think it would be something that we need to, we need to think about how we ensure that outreach, and that we can, ensure through our geographical clusters that we can make those links with where's the nearest library to the children and young people for them to be able to access.
That's good. Now, can I just ask one more question? Moving on. Major, from what you said about people with English as a second language, are we going to have any connection with the barge when the asylum seekers come? Are we going to try and get books in there for them? We're going to, hopefully we'll do something, because they're going to be in there for a long time with not much else to do.
So this is all being discussed through the Multiagency Forum, which is looking at all the services that the council and health partners and police partners are going to be providing to the residents of the barge. We're looking with our voluntary sector partners, so it may be that there's a requirement, but of course the first residents of the barge are not there yet. It's going to be a phased approach, starting with 50, moving up to the full capacity. So once the people start arriving, we can start discussing those requirements. And as I said, the Multi-Agency Forum is sort of holding that response until we can start to work out what that looks like with the people there, but this is part of it.
Councillor Ezard.
I do apologise, I was late. I got caught in the traffic coming up the High West Street. It took me 20 minutes. Unbelievable. But anyway, yes, there was lots of big lorries. A couple of things. Well, one thing that Carol was saying with the, Ukrainians and other ethnic people that here, obviously Emma from Helping Kindness has a lot of information that they give out about translations and, things that are going on from that point of view, which we tap into from Wareham area. The particular area that I'm interested in, I see you're going to the Town and Parish Council briefing, and when you say about you looking for support from them, what's that support you're looking for? Are you, say, taking part in the library? Sort of which way are you looking for them to really support it? Because at the moment, I would say that Wareham Town Council is very disjointed from the library. I mean, I go to the library to do my, and also council, but being on the, the Wareham Council as well, Town Council, there does seem to be a bit of a mismatch there. I mean, they don't know what goes on in the library, and the library doesn't really know what goes on in the Town Council. So it's a two-way thing. So I think whatever you can do to help would be beneficial. But support from both sides, I think, rather than it being two separate entities, because they're quite close to each other. But the other thing I wanted to ask was, with the primary schools, a lot of the primary schools and that don't have libraries anymore, and they used to come into the libraries. I presume they still do as groups or different classes come in. And is there plenty of books? Because I do find that turnover in Wareham, there isn't that choice of books in Wareham. I even find myself it's very limited, and very often you've got to order up the books and wait for ages. So I don't know if any more books could be made available, because it does look as if there'll be more shelf room. So, is that a possibility? So you've got 3 or 4 things there. Thank you.
Okay, so if I'll start, and then I'll let the actual library people talk about the books. So where were we? We were on primary school children. Town and parish councils, sorry. So, town and parish council engagement is part of my portfolio as well, so I feel quite strongly about this. It's not necessarily about imposing a kind of partnership model on town and parish councils and their local library. We really wouldn't want to do that. It's more that as a sector, Dorset Council really wants to properly engage with the town and parish councils, make sure they know what's going on in their patch. Because nothing, I know from my own parish councils, nothing makes a town or a parish council more furious than if something happens and they don't know about it, and rightly so. So we've kept them up to speed all the way along. When we say asking for support, we're basically saying this is our strategy. All the way along, we've asked them, do you think this is a good idea? What's your response? We've tried to get them to respond to our surveys, our consultations. So it's really just about making sure they've got all that information. And that kind of links in with, I suppose you would call it outreach. And really that's something that happens at a local level. And I can kind of almost draw the comparison between this and, for example, waste and recycling, where, you know, members of our teams will go to WI, parish councils, schools, and talk about the work that we do. That's something that I think each individual library makes their own decisions about, depending on the sort of level, as you say, some towns and parish councils and some schools have great relationships with their local library. Certainly something we'd want to encourage, but it's not something that we'd want to impose. So it's a great point. On the availability of books and getting more books in, I'm going to throw this at Kate and Lisa, if I may.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, so I think for some people there will never be enough books in the library, and for others there's a surfeit. So a couple of things there. So one of the actions which has been added to the action plan is actually around what we call collection development. So it's basically the action I've got is ensuring that the library collections meet customer needs. And we've got a couple of new tools which we're bringing in this year. So one is an evidence-based stock management system. So that's basically a way that we can use the data to inform what we buy, what we move around, to try and get the stock in the place where it's most needed. So to bring a bit of kind of science to it as well. We're also, it seems a bit of a boring thing to be doing, but refreshing our collection development policy, because that's really a framework for how we set the kind of collection policy that we have. And that's something that really needs a revision in the same way that we're revising the strategy. It's something to be done alongside that. So that's something we're really looking at. So customers do have the ability, of course, to place requests, to bring stock in. And I think it's just using the evidence to really refresh that. We do go through peaks and troughs, so at the moment we're starting to come into the summer reading challenge period, so it will be really busy in the children's libraries and we're bound to run out of stock. We try and hold some back to sort of backfill the shelves, but yes. But no, thank you for bringing that up, and I think it's also something that we look at from a library-by-library basis, but hopefully with the cluster model that we're bringing in, that should help us to bring a bit more of a view across the piece. So I think that's something we are lacking at the moment. That's one of the drivers behind the model, to help us to do that, to bring the best practice and share that more readily between libraries. So that's what we're planning on collections.
I do think that's a good policy, because libraries, you go in there and think, oh, there's books, and very disappointed if you don't get, a selection of books that you think, it might be a turn-off if we don't boost that a bit. The other thing, I come back and say thanks very much. I think that I'm going to miss the thing next week. I'm on holiday. I'm going to miss the Town and Parish Council sort of briefing, unfortunately. So I would like to have seen what that was. Pardon?
Have you got your books for your holiday?
Yes, I certainly have. Anyway, the important thing is that to really emphasise, just get as many people as possible to come along to the parish councils, because again, the take-up of some of the councillors isn't always as good as it should be. But anyway, I don't know how to encourage that, but I think the clerks need to send out another reminder. But anyway, I haven't seen yet from the Wareham clerk saying that this briefing is on. So I'm not sure what's happened there. So sorry about that.
Thank you, and thank you for that intelligence of that. So we did have a meeting scheduled for the day that we launched the documentation. So you may recall we did a members briefing in the morning, and we were due to do a briefing in the afternoon, but it was pulled at quite short notice, hence rearranging it and then looking to promote that more. So I did a written briefing last week for the circulation to the clerks. I will follow that up to make sure that that has been sent and received, because absolutely we want to really actively brief there, because it's important to, we think it's important to get across the message that we are making changes, and we have some close engagement from some areas, but not so much from others, so trying to get that message across. So I'll take that away and follow that up today or tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batstone.
Coming back for a point of information, or some information from my colleague, and that is certainly in Sturminster, a while ago we had an initiative to try and reach out to our Bulgarian and Ukrainian community when we were working with the Race Equality Council in the town, having a small group called Noster. That has kind of faded recently, but certainly I know the library for a time was keeping a shelf of Bulgarian books following advice of Poles, Bulgarians or whatever. I think that's faded out. I'm not really quite sure, but I know the library were very willing to find books appropriate to the majority groups in the town. Is how you go from having the books to getting the folk in the door. And that comes back to the others in the town encouraging their friends to use it, and also how we can reach out to members of those communities who have small children, which is probably, Carol, what you are best at doing in your team. But certainly I'm very aware that it was no problem, it seemed, for appropriate books to be made available, if necessary, with notice. And going back to how do people know when the place is open, I still like there you have this electric sign above the door, librarian goes in first thing in the morning, switches on the sign, says open, everyone knows. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Jesperson.
Yes, a bit of neon. I love it. Two very small points first. Just to say, when it's probably a bit late, but it's a general point. When we're liaising with town and parish councils, don't use the word support, because they think that means help, as in pay for or do stuff. And what you mean is engage with. So that it's just a general point. The other thing is, when you're calling for volunteers, or when you're going out to recruit your volunteers, please include councillors in that, because we have a lot to do with the number of people who are new to the community who say, I'm looking for a way to get engaged in the community, and it would be nice to be able to point them towards that. But having made those two pedantic points, I have to say I think this is a terrific report, and I'd be very happy to propose that we send it forward to Cabinet with our very good will. So if I could propose that we support the recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will now look. Thank you for bringing that to a swift conclusion. I think it's been really useful conversation. And again, thank you from the chair for the reports and the presentations. I think it's been fantastic, and quite a long journey we've been on. Sort of a year ago, we were sat here, and I know there's work going on before that. So thank you. That has been really tremendous. Could I have a seconder for those? Councillor Jones, thank you. All those in favour? Okay, so those four recommendations will go to Cabinet on the 25th of July. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Moving on, there are no urgent items and there is no exempt business. So at 3:03, I close the meeting, and thank you very much and have a safe journey home, everyone.